The overall aim of participatory design is to understand the ideal dwellings that residents aspire to live in by highlighting their values, their preferences and their aspirations. This is an exciting new approach to developing housing projects for the politically, socially and economically marginalised urban residents. It's more than just participatory appraisal, which is asking what residents want and do not want and then using this information to design. Instead, it involves the community at the initial design stage to create more responsive environments, rather than residents being divorced from the design process and simply being consulted when a plan has been developed by professional architects. The approach has 4 guiding principles. Firstly, just because people may be economically poor doesn't mean we must not work to achieve all of their dwelling aspirations. Second, residents of marginalised communities are not ignorant about dwelling design. They can design, but they may need some professional support, such as technical or institutional support. Third, participatory design is a valuable tool to uncover residents' needs and aspirations, to develop residents' design skills and literacy in terms of spatial awareness or functional aspects, and also to build communities from the bottom up rather than simply receiving a top-down implemented project. The fourth guiding principle is that for good environments we must first ask what the inhabitants want and expect. Step 1 is to begin to understand the current dwelling situation. Simply walk around the study settlement and observe. Record through drawing and notes what the current dwelling situation is. During this process, talk to residents about their current environment. What do they like and dislike? What things are seen as positive and what are negative? If they are willing to participate, sit with them in their home and informally interview them on such things as their dwelling history and current occupation patterns. Remember that dwelling is much more than just the internal area of the house. It should be seen as a system of settings and thus may include spaces outside the physical house, such as the shaded spot under a tree, or the street where children play, or even the local bar or cafe. Step 2 follows on from stage 1. Each resident draws their ideal dwelling. The aim is to see which spaces they draw, which they draw first and thus be most important, and the spatial arrangement of rooms in relation to each other and the public sphere. It's important to remember that most residents have no formal architectural training, and their drawings may not be a clear plan. Therefore, during drawing, question them on their process and why they've drawn things certain ways to clarify their in-process thoughts. It's very important to encourage them, as many residents will be shy and hesitant to draw. During this step, thorough notes should be kept, almost a transcription, to record the residents' responses to your questions. The drawing exercise should be undertaken with a wide range of people. Step 3 takes the findings from the drawings and interviews and creates early stage models that allow residents to design in 3 dimensions. From the stage 2 drawings, generalisations are made of room quantity and size expectations. From these generalisations, 1 to 50 scaled room models are made. Return to site with these models and give them to participants to arrange to further represent what dwellings they would like. This gives 3-dimensional form to their aspirations and encourages thinking on the connection between rooms. Once they have composed their house, introduce real-life local constraints, for example plot size, by drawing this to scale on the base paper. Encourage residents to rethink their house in relation to these real-life constraints. As with step 2, thorough notes and diagrams should be kept of each exercise to record the residents' responses. Step 4 explores the larger neighbourhood scale. As any residential environment should be more than a collection of individual buildings, Step 4 encourages residents to think about the neighbourhood scale. For example, how does their house relate to the street? How does the house relate to their neighbours? From the findings of the ideal house, develop several housing typologies that represent the common housing aspirations. For example, two-storied houses, single-storied houses, apartments or duplex. Make 1 to 50 scale models of different housing typologies. Here we move to focus groups rather than individual interviews to get feedback on the relationship between inside and outside the house. Focus groups are useful to get residents discussing what ideal type of neighbourhood they want. They can discuss the benefits and disadvantages of each type, and the models are very useful to help facilitate this discussion. An important part of this approach is considering how these ideal dwellings can be achieved. Therefore, during the focus group, ask participants how they envisage achieving such dwellings. Do they expect to self-build their dwellings? Do they expect the government to build them? How do they expect to finance them, for example? As with the other stages, recording their responses and actions in the focus group is crucial. A useful method is to have a table with the typologies drawn across the top and with a column for each typology, where you can record the positive and negative comments that the participants make. While a focus group approach is productive for this stage, be careful that all the voices are being heard. Likewise, be observant to extreme influences of certain individuals over others. All participants should feel free to voice their thoughts and not be heavily influenced by others.